All right. Good morning, everybody. Hope you're doing well. Thank you for being on. Today, we are going to talk about generating more deals from expired listings. So, I'm curious for people on, if you're on Facebook, we are monitoring that. Norm, good morning. If you're on, drop a good morning. Let us know you're there. We're on Facebook. So, if you have questions, drop them in the comments. If you're watching live with us here on StreamYard, drop them in the comments as well. Thank you all for being here. So let's talk about expired listings. Before we dive into this, Tim, good morning. Thanks for being on. Courtney, good morning. Thank you for being here. Tara, good morning. Good morning. So expired listings. Chandra, good morning. Why call expireds? We'll talk about that in a minute. But before we get started, you may or may not have heard about the new ruling coming out with the TCPA, which is the Telephone Consumer Protection Act. The TCPA, I'm going to read through this real quick. Now, I'm not going to do a deep dive on this because I feel that could be a whole training. But what I am going to do is explain it real quick because there's a lot of what I think is misinformation around it. What it is, Telephone Consumer Protection Act. I'm just going to read, excuse me, what is going on here. So with this, what it is basically is the TCPA, which goes into effect, I believe today. There is a new ruling where we have to get one-on-one consent to call potential leads, if you will. We have to first get consent before we call potential leads if we're using an automated dialer system. So if we're using an automated dialer system, and let me see here. Here's the quote from the NAR website. Real estate professionals use telemarketing calls and text to promote their services to consumers, which can be an effective tool when implemented in compliance with relevant laws. Under a new Federal Communications Commission, the FCC, rule taking effect January 27th, which was yesterday, agents and brokers promoting real estate services must obtain consent directly from the consumer, known as one-to-one consent, before using an automatic telephone dialing system or sending artificial or pre-recorded voice messages. So here's what that means in a nutshell. If you're using a dialer, you may want to consider stopping. An auto dialer is something where you upload a bunch of people in there that a bunch of prospective, like expireds, canceleds, for sale by owners, where you have not received consent and that dialer starts calling them automatically. Also, if you're sending things like slide dial, where you're sending out an automated voicemail that blasts out to everybody, if you don't have one-to-one consent, you may want to consider not doing that. I would advise don't do it. So here's what I want to do, though, because again, I am not an expert on this subject matter. I have watched a lot of videos on it and trainings, but there are two things I'm going to drop in the links right now, or Leo's going to drop in. One is the president of RedX, which is a data service provider. He had a pretty good training on it. It's about a 35-minute video. I highly recommend you watch it. Leo, please drop that in the comments. The other is an NAR link. They have a webinar on this ruling today that they have a webinar on this ruling today at 1 p.m. Central Time. And Leo's going to drop a link, and I highly recommend you sign up for that, just so you can be well-versed, more informed. Now, keep in mind, the do not call list, that's a separate subject matter. I highly advise you do not break the law by calling a do not call. So if someone is listed on the do not call list, do not call them. A lot of data services we're going to talk about here in a moment provide data. They do scrub against the do not call, but don't be the agent that gets a lawsuit because you called somebody on the do not call list. So I just want to throw that out there. It's not worth it. They're big fines. Don't call people that are on the do not call list. And I highly recommend sign up for the NAR webinar today at 1 p.m. and watch that to get a better grasp around the TCPA ruling that just took effect. So that's all I'm going to touch on there. Leo dropped those comments or links in. He did. Thank you. Click on that. Sign up. Let's dive in. So generating more deals from expired listings. Let's talk about, for one, why call expireds? Why would we want to call an expired or canceled listing? Expired listings are generally motivated and canceled as well and have already expressed an interest in selling. It's one of the fastest ways to set an appointment and get in front of a potential seller. So, expired and canceled. What is the difference? One, with an expired listing is essentially a listing that signed an agreement with their agent that agreement has run its course and it has now expired. The time frame ran out. Maybe it was a 3-month listing, a 6-month listing. The timeline has run its course and the listing is expired. You are fair game to reach out to that seller now. Canceled listing means the client has canceled their agreement with their current agent. Again, fair game. If you see a listing and withdrawn, do not call it. A withdrawn listing means that it is no longer in the MLS. However, that client still has an active agreement with their agent. So I hear people say, "Oh, I call withdrawals all the time." Don't do it. It's unethical. It's against the law. Don't do it. Expireds, canceled, fair game. Withdrawals, don't call them. That's my 2 cents on that. So why call expireds? Now, back in 2011, when I shifted into selling real estate full time, this is how I built my business. I got within I sold 28 homes my first year, 32. I always forget that. I have to look it up. 61 homes my second, 65 my third, 96 my fourth year. So the bulk of those sales came from calling expired listings. I knew one thing: I didn't have any money and I needed to get business and get sales fast. So I saw this as expired listings are people that have essentially raised their hand, expressing an interest to want to sell their home. And I knew that if I could get good at calling these expired listings, I could set an appointment today and get in front of a seller and potentially take a new listing. So that's why I say it's one of the fastest ways to set an appointment, but there are some challenges to it. So where do we get the data? Where do we get the expired data? Here is a short list. Now, there are many ways to pull data. Here is a short list, though, of where to pull some data from. So mojosells.com, you can pay for data there. RedX is the link that Leo just posted. One of those links is the president of RedX, as I mentioned. He did a training around the TCPA ruling. They provide a lot of data as well. Vulcan 7 is a good one. Arch Agent is another. LandVoice, Espresso Agent. Here's the thing. There are tons of data service providers out there. In my personal experience, the best data tends to be Vulcan 7 as far as from an accuracy perspective. That's just in my experience. I've used Mojo, RedX, Vulcan. I've used LandVoice. I used Arch Agent for a moment. I don't even know if that one's still around, but Google it and see. Never used Espresso Agent, but I have used the others. And of all of them, in my opinion, Vulcan 7 seemed to work the best. Now, I'm not tied to Vulcan 7 in any way. I don't get any money from them or anything like that for saying that. That's just my personal experience in where I found the best data to be. So you may want to check those out, and that's how you can get expired data. Now, you can also go in. There are ways to get free data. Go through the tax records. You can find different various sites to pull data for, find phone numbers and information for free. There are plenty of ways to do that. For me, it's a time perspective thing, though. I don't want to spend hours researching 10 phone numbers to find out that 8 of them aren't correct. I would rather spend the money, and that's what I did early on. Even though I didn't have a ton of money to work with, I spent the money to get the data so I could start calling people to get in front of them to go sell homes. So I look at this as an investment in yourself and in your business. So again, that's where we're going to get some data. Now, let's talk about some challenges with expireds. So I'm curious who, and again, we're looking at comments here, who is currently calling expireds, who has called expireds, who's been calling expireds, who has had success generating sales from expireds. Drop it in the comments. Let me know. I'm kind of curious who's on the call. Is anyone actively calling expireds now, or maybe you've been doing it for the last couple of years and you've had experience and good success with it? Or maybe it's something, if you're wanting to call expireds and you just haven't started yet and you're wanting to learn more and that's why you're here, drop it in the comments. Let me know. Curious to see who all is on the call here. So let me know who's out there. Give me a minute to take a drink of water too. So curious on that. Tried calling expireds years ago. Yes. So people have tried it. Maybe it worked. Maybe it didn't work. I have a fear of calling expired listings mainly because I'm a chicken. That's funny. Yeah. I was too when I first started doing this. So that's going to be one of the things. It's calling expireds or cold calling in general can be scary. Right? Like I'll never forget when I first started doing this back in 2011, I had this little tiny office that I was working in, and I had a list of expireds and I had my script book in front of me, and I was terrified. All right? And for those of you that know me, you've probably heard the story, but I literally would start calling. Like all I knew was I needed to make money, and I was terrified to make a phone call. And so I would sit there and be like, please don't answer, please don't answer, please don't answer, right? Because I was terrified. And then they would answer, and and I would get one objection, I'd be like, okay, thank you, and I'd hang up. Right? And then you'd see a house, I'd see a listing for like 600,000. I'd be like, oh God, like back then that was a ton of money to me. And I'd be like, oh my gosh, yeah, I'm not going to call that one. That's terrifying. I'll call one for 60,000 because that was, kind of where I felt more comfortable back then. And so it's one of those things where a lot of this comes with, you have to start. You have to start practicing, script practicing to get good at overcoming objections. And when you start and begin doing it, that's when you start to become more comfortable with it. It's like anything else. We're not going to be comfortable. I saw a comment to Leo, pop that one back up. I saw Jordan commented, if you would, please. I've done letters due to lack of good phone numbers. Yeah, absolutely. Letters can work well. Now, I'm going to talk about direct mail and how in the past I wasn't a big believer in direct mail, but now I am. So I have a slide here that I'm going to talk why I believe a little bit more in direct mail than I have in the past. I still believe, though, calling, if you can get good phone numbers, calling is the fastest way to set an appointment. But I do think, to your point, Jordan, direct mail can be an excellent way to convert as well. We'll talk about that here in a moment. So let's talk about challenges with expireds. Now, often they've had a bad experience with their previous realtor. Not always, but in my experience, when I would go on appointments, most of the time, even if it wasn't a bad experience, the experience was a lack of communication between the realtor and the client. So we all know when we take a listing and we first put it on the market, we're excited. We're pumped up, we're excited, we're ready to sell it. I just got a listing, it's very exciting. Signs in the yard, marketing's going out. Maybe some showings happen in that first week. Maybe the second week, less showings happen. Maybe the third week, there's no showings. Maybe the fourth week, there's no showings. And maybe we haven't done a good job of keeping in touch with our clients. Now, maybe 3 or 4 weeks has gone by where we haven't communicated with our client. And now we just feel kind of silly because we don't know what to say. We don't know. And we're like, oh my gosh, well, I haven't called them in 4 weeks now. Now I feel really weird. And then we just kind of, one of those things that we put off. We don't call until they call us, the dreaded seller calling us. We're like, we see them calling and like, oh my gosh, what do I do? What do I do? I don't know what to do. The house isn't selling. So oftentimes in my experience, for one, we have trainings, and we'll do some more trainings on seller servicing and why it's important to update your clients weekly with an update and never let a week go by where you don't call them. But in my experience, when I would sit at the kitchen table with an expired listing, most of the time they would say, yeah, the communication between us and our agent was not the best. We would call, it would take days, a week to get a return phone call. We wanted to drop the price, but we would have to call them to tell them, let's drop the price. There was not a lot of proactiveness, if you will, on the agent's part to want to help them get the home sold. So that's one challenge that we have to overcome. And the way we overcome that is by becoming an expert on communicating with our client. That's one thing I implemented into my listing presentation was my communication guarantee. And in a nutshell, what that is that Mr. and Mrs. Seller, every single week, I guarantee you will have a phone call from me with an update of what I'm doing to get your home sold. Now, oftentimes we're going to speak more than once a week. But at minimum, you're going to hear from me every week with an update of what I'm doing to help you get your home sold. So that was my communication guarantee. That was something I committed to them that I was going to do, and it's something I stood by. So every week I would call my sellers and give them an update on what was going on in the market. That in itself, if you begin implementing that, you will set yourself apart from the bulk of the realtors out there that don't call their clients. So just keep that in mind. That's going to be one thing we have to overcome, though. Now, another challenge may be the seller may be receiving a lot of phone calls from realtors, and they might get a little upset about it. Right? Their house has been on the market for 6 months with very little to no activity. And now all of a sudden it expires and they get bombarded with 10 or 15 phone calls from realtors. So they might not be the happiest. If you're the 8th realtor to call them, you're going to get the objection of, you're the 8th person to call me. All right? They're not happy. It may happen, but it's okay. We're going to talk about ways to just overcome that. So that may be another thing, though. Now, the seller, here's another challenge. The seller will most likely be interviewing multiple agents, so competition will be high. Generally, if somebody gets a referral from an agent, they probably, for the most part, they were referred, a family or friend referred them to a realtor. Their realtor came out, they hired them because they were referred. And if that house didn't sell now, they are going to make sure they're going to interview people this time. Maybe they didn't interview people the first time. This time they absolutely are. So it is rare when you set an expired appointment that you're going to be the only agent on that appointment. you are going to be competing. So I've competed against 6, 7, 8 agents, sometimes 10, sometimes 2. But generally on an expired, it is very rare that you're going to be the only agent they're going to talk to, which means you have to make sure your listing presentation is top notch. So you have to make sure you're practicing your listing presentation. It's not just something you're going out there and trying to wing it, because if you try to wing it, you will lose every appointment. Now, this is something too early on in my career when I started getting good at setting appointments. It took a couple months, but I started getting good at setting appointments, and I was terrible on my actual presentation. I was taught how to get into rapport. I was very nice. I'd get into rapport, and they wouldn't hire me. So I started asking people, and I highly recommend you do this too. If they list with somebody else other than you, call them and ask. Out of curiosity, I hope you don't mind me asking, but I'm always looking to get better. And out of curiosity, why did you hire so-and-so over me? And they're going to tell you, well, they said they were going to do this, 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 and this. We really like that. You didn't mention that in your presentation. And now think about adding that into your presentation. You go out and you lose another one. Call and ask, have the same conversation. I'll see what happens there is we're learning through failure, where a lot of people, there's a difference between two people. Some people take failure and use it as a learning lesson and how to improve themselves and get better. Other people get bitter. Oh, that's BS. They hired so-and-so. I can't believe it. Blah, 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 right? Those people never get ahead. So take the lesson, learn from it, and figure out ways to get better. And that's all I did. I would just go and lose enough to where I kept adding things into my presentation to where finally my presentation got pretty good. And then sellers didn't really have any objections. They were like, yeah, that sounds really good. Yeah, let's go ahead and get started. And so just be thinking about that. Don't worry. If you go on 10 listings and don't get any of them, you're learning 10 ways to do it better. And that will happen. I promise you in the beginning, you're going to lose out on more appointments than you're going to win. But if you stick with it and keep going, you will begin to win more. So just keep that in mind. Now, you're going to have to become proficient in overcoming objection handlers. That means that it is rare that you're going to call an expired and they're going to say, yeah, you sound like a nice person. Come on out and list my house. You're going to call and say, hi, this is Michael. I was curious you're still wanting to sell your house. Oh, I'm so happy you called me. Yes, you sound super nice. Come out and sell my house. That is rare. You're going to get 4, 5, 6 objections on the phone before you set an appointment. You're going to get potential objections at the presentation. They're going to ask questions. You have to become proficient in handling these things if you want to become an effective agent at calling expireds. So there's some of our challenges there. Let's talk about why I don't believe in direct mail in the past, and now I do a little bit more believe in direct mail. Here's why in the past, when I first started calling expireds, I didn't believe in direct mail. Because it's slow. It takes time to get those mailers printed out. It takes time at the post office to get them to the client. It can be expensive. If I don't have the budget, in which I didn't in the past, I didn't have the budget, and it can be very expensive to send mailers. And sellers are receiving a lot of mail from a lot of realtors. So what I would find too is that at the kitchen table, sometimes I would take a listing and we'd be signing the paperwork and they'd say, oh, here's a bunch of realtors that said they have buyers for the house. You may want to call them. And they would give me the stack of mailers that they received, but I was the one that they were signing the paperwork with. And it's because I picked up the phone and called them. Now, to Jordan's point, if we have bad data, I would be sending a mailer. I would be figuring out a way to send them a mailer. If they are on the do not call list, I would not be calling them. I would be sending them a mailer. So be thinking about that too. When you start getting data, you may have 100 leads in there, 100 potential sellers, and maybe 50 of them or 60 of them are on the do not call list. Well, we need to start thinking about how we get creative around getting a mail in front of them. And is it just a general generic mailer that, is the same as everybody else? Or is there something captivating to it? Is there something that's going to stand out? Is there something that's going to get their attention? And I know, Jordan, I think if I recall correctly, you do some high quality type mailers, and feel free to comment on that, because I know you do something a little bit different where it stands out a little bit more than the competition. And so while I say here why I don't believe in direct mail, in the past I didn't, now I do. And I do for those reasons, because if it's on the DNC, it's not just we're going to brush by it and not try to convert that seller. Let's get in front of them. Let's do something to send mail, do something to get in front of them. And I do think if we have good data, calling them can be very, very effective. Not can be, is very, very effective, very efficient, because again, I can get on the phone today and talk to 10 sellers and potentially set a few appointments. So if my business is slow, I could now just pick up the phone and start calling people and go set appointments. So it's fast, picking up the phone and call. So again, I don't want to contradict myself here, but While I do think direct mail, as I put here, I don't believe in it. I do believe in it now for those reasons I just mentioned. Now, our process. Let's talk about the process for converting expireds. Here's what I want to do. Every day, this is what I did for about 10 years. Every day I got in the office before 8 a.m. And whether it's your home office, I used to have a physical office, I still do, obviously, but I would get into my physical office. At 8 o'clock in the morning, I would start calling. I would call all the new canceled and expired leads first thing in the morning at 8 a.m. Now, some people might say, oh my gosh, that's so early. I can't believe you do that. I've heard people calling at 7:30. That's my limiting belief where I think that's too early. I never felt 8 a.m. was too early. And in all my years of doing this and probably hundreds of thousands of phone calls, if not more, I only had one person that said, man, why are you calling me so early? I work the night shift. But that was it, one out of a lot. And so I would start calling all of the new canceled and expireds first thing in the morning at 8 o'clock. Now, why would I call it 8 o'clock? The new ones. The reason for that is because I wanted to call people before everybody else started calling. In my market here in St. Louis, when I was actively doing this, when I was actively, selling as an agent before running the brokerage now, what I would tell you is that there was probably 8 to 10 people that called expireds consistently. And it was the same people I would see on the appointments. We'd be passing each other. They'd be coming out. I'd be going in. I'd be going in. They'd be coming out, and vice versa. It was the same handful of agents that I would see consistently over like an 8 to 10 year span. So what does that tell me? For one, there's like 12,000 agents in St. Louis. It means that there aren't that many people going after this pool of sellers. It's a pretty small number that do it consistently. Now, you might get people that start in it and dabble in it and try it for a week or two and then say, oh, this isn't working or this is expensive, whatever the case may be. But what I can tell you is consistently, there was only a handful of people. So that gave me some good odds as well. There's only 8 to 10 people consistently calling these every single day. So I just had to beat out 8 or 10 other agents. The number's not that high. So I would call them first thing in the morning. And then after that, after I would call all of my new leads, now also something to keep in mind, in 2011, we were in a very strong buyer's market here in my local market. There were a lot of listings that didn't sell. So there was an ample or a large number of expireds that would take place every day. Fast forward to today, where we're in a much stronger seller's market, there's not going to be as many expired or canceleds to call. Just because there's not as much inventory as there was in the past. So again, you might only get a handful that you need to call now, rather than back in the day, I might have got 50, 60, 100 in any given time period to call. But what I would do is call the new ones first. After I call the new leads, I'm moving on to the leads that are 2 to 60 days old. So I'm calling the old leads that maybe I haven't connected with yet. So I want to make sure that I'm not just calling these people once and then forgetting about it. Or maybe it's somebody that I connected with, I had a good conversation, and now I need to do a follow-up call with them. If you think about the statistics from a cold calling perspective, they say 2% of sales are made on the first call. So that means if I get really, really good at making my phone calls, and I get really, really good at overcoming my objection handlers, and I do this consistently, that means I can probably safely expect to set 2 appointments out of 100 within the first call. Now, I feel with these expireds, if you get good at it, that number's probably higher, like 5 to 7%. But what you will find is that the bulk of the appointments you will set will come from follow-up. And when I mean follow-up, I'm not saying we call them once back, call them back once and then, oh man, they're ghosting me. They haven't called me back. I'm talking about between the 5th to 12th contact is where the bulk of your appointments will come from. So if I talk to somebody today and I have an excellent conversation, one thing I want to do is take really good notes about my conversation, because you will forget when you start doing a high volume of calls to people, you're not going to remember every conversation you had. So I'm going to take really good notes about my conversation, and then I'm going to set a follow-up for when I'm going to follow up with them. They're going to tell me, yeah, we're going out of town. We'll be back on the 13th of February. Give me a call. We'll be ready to do something. I'm putting that in my notes. All right, where are they going on vacation? Where are they traveling to? They're coming back on the 13th. I have it in my calendar now or in my CRM to call them on the 13th. I'm getting alerted of that I'm going to call them. I'm going to call them and say, hey, it's the 13th. How was your vacation? Just wanted to touch base again. I know you said you might be interested in doing something here today. Things like that. So keep that in mind. The bulk of your appointments will come from follow-up. And you might have to follow up a lot, 5 to 12 to 13 times before you set the appointment. So what I always tell people too is never give up on follow-up. If you've called 5 times, call a 6th time. If If they're still not answering, call the 7th. If they're still not answering, call an 8th. I don't stop calling people, following up until they pick up the phone and say, quit calling me. When they tell me to quit calling me, that is when I stop. Until then, I continue to call. So just keep that in mind. Follow up is key when it comes to these appointments. Now, let's talk about the script. So let's talk about the script and what we're going to say when we call them. This is the script I use. Take a screenshot. It's in our script book as well. If you're with Network Global Agents, you have access to it. Go to the intranet there and you can download it. Hi, my name is Michael. I'm a local realtor in the area, and I see your home at 123 Main Street has come off the market, and I was wondering if it's sold, or if not, is it still available? All right, we know it's still available because we saw it's expired, but we still want to ask and just see what they say. Yeah, and they're going to give me something like, yeah, it didn't sell, but we're not sure what we're going to do yet. I appreciate you letting me know that, and I probably, that's basically something to the fact that it's unfortunate it didn't sell. Let me ask you, if you could get your home sold in the next 30 days and get top dollar for it, would you consider getting it back on the market? Now, why would I ask that? One, it's going to open up a conversation. Most people are going to say, well, yeah, because they wanted to sell it. So most of the people are like, well, yeah, I mean, of course I would. Who wouldn't, right? If I could still get this sold in the next 30 days and get top dollar, well, of course I would. So that is an open-end question a little bit that's designed to gauge a response. If we could get your home sold in the next 30 days and get you top dollar, would you consider getting it back on the market? Now, you will get objections there where people might be like, no, we're not, right? But it's rare that you're just going to get shut down where they say, no, no, we wouldn't consider that. It's very rare. It might happen 5% of the time, but 95% of the time, they're going to give you an explanation of, yeah, we would consider, well, yeah, we wanted to sell it. We're moving to wherever. We need to sell this thing, but it just didn't sell. We weren't getting activity, whatever the case. Most of the time, about 95% of the time, they're going to open up and start having a conversation with you as to why the home maybe did or didn't sell. So that's my opening. Very simple and to the point. Hi, my name's Michael. I'm a realtor in the area. I see that your home at 123 Main Street has come off the market. I was wondering if that's sold, or if not, is it still available? Let them respond. If I could get your home sold in the next 30 days and get you top dollar, would you consider getting it back on the market? Now, very short and to the point. Here's why I shorten it, because here's the thing. You have a few seconds when making a cold call to engage and get their attention. All right, so if I get on here and say, hi, my name's Michael. I'm with Network Global Real Estate Brokers. I am a full-time professional realtor, and I specialize in selling homes that didn't sell the first time around. And I was curious, blah, 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 right? It's too long. You have to get to the point. You have a few seconds here to get to the point, to get them to respond, to engage in a conversation. So if you're currently calling expires right now and your opening is very long, it's like a paragraph long, cut it down. Make it short. You do not have to use my script, but shorten it up. I promise you, you will win more listings if you get to the point and you're not super wordy. So for like the high I's, right? Like a high I person, naturally, if you know the DISC profile, a high I person naturally is going to be more talkative. You may need to be more cognizant and aware that you need to limit the words that you're using to get to the point with these expires, because keep in mind, you might be the 5th person or the 10th person to call them. Right, so you might get shut down if we get super wordy. We've got to limit that, right? Like early on in my career, I used a very long script and I did not have good results. It was too long, too wordy. I lost them within the first 20 seconds of that phone call. So shorten it up, get to the point, and let's keep moving. Now, let's talk about this. Here's what I want to figure out on this call. If they tell me yes, let's go back. If they say, yeah, we would consider it. I want to know, if your home sold, where are you planning on moving to? Now, why do I want to know that? Because early in my phone conversation here, I want to find the motivation for where they're moving. That is the reason they're moving, is there is some form of motivation. They're building a house. They're downsizing. They want to be closer to the grandkids. They're relocating out of town to be closer to their kids. Whatever the case may be, I want to figure that out because I can use that to my advantage on the call. Because if they tell me that, yes, we are relocating to Florida, because we want to get out of the cold, or even better, we want to relocate to Florida to be closer to our grandkids. All right, I figured that out. That's exciting. How soon are you wanting to be there? Well, as soon as this sells, we're going. Fantastic. Why don't we do this? Why don't I set up a time? Why don't I come out this afternoon? I can share with you my marketing plan and show you everything I do to get home sold. And then if they say, well, no, we're not sure if we're going to, sell it now, or we're just not sure what we're going to do. Completely understand. And are you giving up on the goal of wanting to be closer to your kids in Florida or grandkids? Right? It's a pain point. Well, no, of course we're not giving up on the goal. Well, fantastic. Well, why don't, it wouldn't hurt to at least hear what I have to do to get home sold, would it? I've actually helped hundreds of sellers just like yourself who were on the market previously. Their home failed to sell, and I was able to come in and help them get it sold. It's no cost, no obligation whatsoever, and it certainly wouldn't hurt to hear my plan, would it? And what I have to do to get home sold, you know? And I guess not. Yeah, come on out. Right. So figure out the motivation of where they're going and use that to your advantage in your conversation. So keep that in mind. If your home sold, if your home had sold, where were you planning on moving to? Florida. Repeat and affirm back. Florida, that's exciting. What's taking you to Florida? Be closer to the grandkids. Get out of the cold weather. We're tired of the snow. We already have a place in Florida. We're just looking to sell this house so we can move there permanently. Whatever the case may be, figure that out. And what you'll find too is, I'm going to talk about this. I don't have a slide on it, but repeating and affirming when I have these conversations. What does repeating and affirming mean? It means when I ask a question and they answer, I'm repeating back to them their answer and affirming that I heard it. So if you're home sold, where were you planning on moving to? Florida. Florida, that's exciting. How soon are you wanting to be there? Well, as soon as possible. As soon as possible. That's great. Now, that is repeating and affirming. I'm repeating back what they're saying. Now, if I don't repeat and affirm, how soon are you wanting to, if you're home sold, where are you planning on moving to? Florida. How soon are you wanting to be there? As soon as possible. Right? Why do you think your home didn't sell? The marketing. What do you think we could do this time to get your home sold? I don't know. I'm interrogating them now. So when I just start zinging questions at them, I'm interrogating them. Doesn't that sound more like an interrogation if I'm just going bang, 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 bang without repeating and affirming? I soften the call up by repeating and affirming back what they're telling me. If your home sold, where are you planning on moving to? Florida. Florida, that's exciting. What's taking you to Florida? The grandkids. So the goal is to be closer to the grandkids. Yes, it is. Fantastic. How soon are you wanting to be there? We'd like to be there as soon as possible. So it sounds like the goal is to be there as soon as possible, right? I'm repeating and affirming back. Keep that in mind. That's very, very important. It's a practice skill set. It's not necessarily natural because we want to gather information, but it works in any conversation you'll have, whether you're working with buyers, sellers, listing appointments, buyer consultations. Repeat and affirm back, and you're going to warm up the call. You're going to find yourself getting into rapport with people because they are hearing you. They're hearing that you're listening and you're understanding where they're coming from, and you're not just thinking about what you're going to say next, because that's what happens too. And that's why we're going to talk about some of these objection handlers, because when I become proficient at objection handlers, I can actively listen on the phone call now. What does that mean? That means when I don't know what I'm going to say next and they're speaking, I am not listening because all I'm focused on is what am I going to say next. When I become very proficient and I internalize all of my scripts, now I can actively listen when the conversations are being had. When they're speaking, I'm not worried about an objection coming up because I know whatever objection comes up, I'm going to be able to handle it because I've practiced my scripts enough and I've internalized them. And here's the cool thing. When you call expireds and canceled, there's only a handful of objections you're ever going to get. It's not like there's this new crazy objection we've never come across. You're going to get 5 or 6 different objections every single time. They're going to be the same. And we're going to talk through this here in a moment. So let's look at this. Let's dig deeper first before we get into the objections. Here are questions you could ask. What do you think stopped your home from selling? What do you think? I don't know. We got tons of activity. We had 57 showings and we never got an offer. If they had 57 showings on the house and never got an offer, what do you think is wrong with it? You as the agent, I'm asking you guys. They tell you they had 57 showings on the house and never got an offer. What's wrong with the property? It's price, right? It's not marketing, it's price. Here's our experience, even an AR statistic. If a home is priced correctly, no matter the market, it will sell quickly. Courtney says pricing. Yes, Courtney, exactly. Pricing. Pricing is the issue, right? That's the cool thing about expireds too. Most of the time, pricing is the issue. So if you're able to adjust the price, the property will sell. You're going to be the hero because you're going to sell it quickly because you priced it correctly. Price is the issue. So what do you think stopped your home from selling? Don't know, had 57 showings, no offers. Now, here's what the National Association of Realtor Statistics tells us, and this also aligns with my personal experience well. If a property is priced correctly, it will sell quickly. If we're getting a lot of activity and no offers, we are 4 to 6% off on price. Let's call it 5%. So if I had 57 showings on this property and no offers, I'm 5% off on price. If I'm getting low activity, meaning that I have, maybe over the course of 60 days, I've only had a couple of showings, I'm probably 6 to 10% off on price. And if nobody's coming to see it, but we're getting views online, but no one's scheduling appointments, we've missed the price by 10% or greater. Now, with that said, we need to factor in some things like market trends, right? How much activity or how much inventory is out there. If I'm in a very strong buyer's market with 12 months of inventory, that means I'm competing against a lot of homes. If I'm in a seller's market where there's 2 months of inventory, that means that that's a seller's market. So I need to be looking at that too, engaging what's average days on market for a property. In some markets, average days on market might be 12. In others, it might be 120. So I need to know my current market that I'm in as well. And Elise says they have too much stuff in it and the buyers cannot picture their stuff in it. Yeah, that happens a lot too. Depersonalizing homes as well is very important. That's why I recommend staging consultations as well. Have a staging consultant go out there and give them guidance on what to do to get their house ready to set up, to get your photographer in there to take photos. So there's a ton of different reasons for why it didn't sell. Most of the time though, it's going to be price. Now, next question I want to ask. If I could get your home sold and net you what you need and help you get to whatever their motivation is, Florida, for our example, that would be a good thing. Wouldn't you agree? That's a tie down. Wouldn't you agree is called a tie down. It's language of sales type stuff. Wouldn't you agree? I'm getting them to agree with me. Wouldn't you agree? Isn't that correct? Things like that are tie downs, what I'm saying at the end of my sentence. So if I could get your home sold and net you what you need and help you get moved to Florida to be closer to the grandkids, that would be a good thing. Wouldn't you agree? Well, yeah, absolutely it would. Fantastic. Myself and my team actually specialize in getting homes sold just like yours. You see, sometimes even the best homes don't sell the first time on the market. And I'm confident with our proactive and proven marketing strategy, we will be able to help you get your home sold for top dollar and get you closer to the grandkids in Florida. Does that sound good? So there we go. Another objection handler right there. So that's something that, again, is a learned script, right? We learn it, we internalize it, we make it part of our own vocabulary and our own language, and it starts to sound like us. Because that's the other thing with new agents when I come across, when they say, I don't like scripts because scripts don't sound like me. Well, scripts are not supposed to sound like you. They're supposed to sound like a very successful realtor. So get over that hurdle, the arrogance of scripts don't sound like me. I was arrogant once too when it came to that. Oh, that doesn't sound like me. That's stupid. That's cheesy, whatever the case may be. And guess what? I didn't make any money. And when I started to internalize scripts, and here's the other thing, they want to make them their own right out of the gate. Well, that doesn't sound like me, so I'm going to say it this way. This way isn't proven, but I'm going to say it this way because I like it better. And here's what happens. When you don't internalize your scripts and you don't know them and you get on a phone call, here's what happens. You see, it's terrible. All right. I script practiced with hundreds of agents over the years. And when they try to go rogue and not internalize their scripts, they sound awful. So you may think you sound fantastic on your own, but if you're not selling houses, learn the script. All right. Don't be that agent that's like, oh, I don't need scripts, this or that. Just learn it. I was that agent once too. It's stupid. It really is. Like when I learned the scripts, and then over time, you internalize this dialogue, you make it your own. And then it just becomes a natural part of the conversation and your vocabulary and the way you speak. 95% of what I say in our industry is scripted, but it doesn't sound scripted because I've made it my own. I've practiced it enough to where it just becomes part of my everyday speech. And so keep that in mind. If you're against scripts, don't be. They will make you millions of dollars. I promise you they will if you get really good at them. Now you have to practice them every day. Talk about here at the end. You have to practice, but when you get good at internalizing scripts, you will make more money. It is a fact. So again, here's my script. Now let's talk about some common seller objections. Keep in mind too, your listing presentation should be a script, right? On my listing presentation, the same cheesy little 2 or 3 jokes I tell within it will get the sellers to laugh is a script. I say it every single time I go on a presentation. My presentation is scripted, but it doesn't sound scripted. It sounds like a natural conversation that I'm having with a potential client. So keep that in mind. Now, seller, here's an objection. I'm going to work with a local realtor that sells homes in my neighborhood. Who's had that one come up again or come up? It doesn't happen as much, in my opinion, as it has in the past, when it was kind of like the days of the neighborhood expert that just kind of owned a subdivision or owned an area. But here's an objection for that. If they give you, I'm going to work with the local realtor that sells homes in my neighborhood. It sounds like it's important to you that you have a realtor that's very familiar with your area. Is that correct? Yeah, absolutely. May I share a concern that I have? The likelihood of someone buying your home that is already living in the area, insert the area, or insert their name, that's already living in the area, John, is actually quite small. You see, we have a much greater chance of finding a buyer for your home outside of the area. Does that make sense? So what is that telling them? It's telling them that, yes, even though the neighborhood realtor, the likelihood of somebody that already lives in their area that's going to buy in their area, it's actually pretty small. If I can proactively and aggressively get their home on over 350 different websites, because we know that 97% of home buyers start their search online. And I also take advantage of my relocation contacts and reaching out to companies like Cartus, Serva, NEI, Altair, different global relocation companies that are moving people in and around the area. And I can reach out to my contacts there to see who they have moving into the area that might be a good fit. Well, wouldn't that make more sense to get to cast a wider net to get your property in front of more potential buyers rather than just focusing on one specific area? You see, so I'm overcoming this objection because I am not the expert in any area. I'm not saying being an expert in an area is a bad thing. It's not. It's actually a really, really good thing. But if you're not an expert in that particular area, you need to be able to overcome this and paint the position that you're going to do a better job of casting a wider net to get this property sold, because you're going to get it in front of more potential home buyers, therefore driving more traffic to the property, which in turn could drive the price up to get your seller more money. So again, that's just an objection right there. Now, if you're a neighborhood expert, use that to your advantage, right? There are lots of advantages to being a neighborhood expert. I know all of the inventory currently on the market here. I've helped X amount of people buy and sell homes in here. I know this market inside and out. I'm very familiar with it. I know everything there is to know about it. I know all the HOA rules and guidelines, so on and so forth. I am the best choice to help you get this home sold because I know this subdivision better than anyone else, right? Use it to your advantage. But if you're not, use my script here, right? Show them how aggressive and proactive you're going to be in helping them market their home to get it sold. Now, so that's one objection. Here's another one. So same thing. It actually ties in. Sorry, it's not another one. It ties into my previous script. In today's market, you have to be able to cast a wide net and reach buyers from all over the area, including relocation buyers moving in from out of state. Can you see how that would be a benefit to you? Also, John, 97% of home buyers start their home search online, and that's why we focus heavily on internet marketing to get your home in front of these potential buyers. This is exactly why we should get together for 15 minutes to discuss our proactive approach to bring you more buyers. So again, I gave that script a few minutes ago. I knew it, but this is how we finish it up. Here are a couple of things here. 15 minutes. That's exactly why we should get together for 15 minutes to discuss our proactive approach to bring more buyers. Now, how long, everybody on this call, how long are your listing presentations generally? Does anybody do a 15-minute listing presentation? Probably not. And I don't either, usually. But I could get it done in 15 minutes if I had to. And what that means is that I can cover all of my content that I need to cover for what I'm going to do within a 15-minute time frame. Probably 10 minutes, but 15 minutes. Generally, my presentations take about an hour because the seller has questions. They also want me to walk through the house and take a look at it, right? So generally, but I don't say, hey, do you have an hour that I could come out and give my presentation? It's too much time. So my presentations generally turn into an hour, but I always say 15 minutes because I can get in and out of a house in 15 minutes if I needed to. Now, depending on the questions they have and how the conversation goes, typically it's going to take more than 15 minutes, but I could get it done in 15 minutes. So therefore, I'm not lying to them. I can come out and do everything I need to do within 15 minutes, including get the paperwork sent to them to sign. So 15 minutes is my rule of thumb. Would it be okay if I came out for 15 minutes? Doesn't it sound like we should get together? It'd only take about 15 to 20 minutes. And I can share with you everything I do to proactively get homes sold just like yours. 15 minutes is my number, because if I say, hey, how long is this going to take? About an hour. Nah, you know what? I'm not sure. I don't have an hour. It's a lot of time. Well, how long is this going to take? Actually, I can come out and share with you everything I do to get home sold. It'll take about 15 minutes. Would that be okay? Now, again, generally that appointment will run longer than 15 minutes, but I have come and gone with the listing in 15 to 20 minutes. So you can do it. So just keep that in mind. When you're talking to these sellers, don't say, it's going to take an hour. Well, generally my appointments are 3 hours. We've all been on the appointment that's been 3 hours, All right, everybody's been on it. I've on an appointment that ran like 2.5 to 3 hours because the sellers just talked and talked and talked so much. And I don't like to be rude and say, hey, I got to go. But it got to the point where you just didn't even care if you got the listing anymore. You just wanted to get out of the house. We've all been there, right? But keep in mind, 15 minutes is kind of my rule of thumb. It's worked well. Now, another objection. I'm going to stay with the same agent. So this one comes up a lot. If you recall from our company meeting last week, we talked about some data on this. Sellers have a higher chance of selling their home when they list with a new agent rather than staying with the same agent. So this will be an objection that will come up though. Great, I'm going to stay with the same agent. Great, tell me, what specifically is the benefit for you to do that? It's an open-ended question. Well, they just said they can flip it active again. We got to get this sold. We have to get this sold. So they said they can turn it active again and get it sold. All right. Here's my concern. What is the agent, your last agent, going to do differently? One thing I might want to add to those, have you signed paperwork with them yet? Because if they have, you need to stop, wish them well, get off the call, right? Don't go behind the sign. Don't be unethical, none of that. So I would ask, I'm going to stay with the same agent. That's fantastic if you sign paperwork with them yet. No, not yet. They're going to send stuff over. Well, tell me, what specifically is the benefit for you to stay with them? Well, they said they can just send over the amendment, whatever the case may be. They can flip it active again. We really have to get this sold. Totally understand that time is important and you need to get this back on to get it sold. And maybe at this point, I know their motivation as well. So I know you want to get to Florida to be closer to the grandkids. And, man, I just want to ask, what is your last agent going to do differently this time to make sure it sells that they didn't do the last time? So it starts to plant some doubt, right? Now, if you knew I could sell it for you in this market and net you what you need, would you at least consider it? So that question, what is your last agent going to do differently this time to make sure it sells that they didn't do last time? Plant some doubt now. Well, you're right. You know what? They were on the market 4 months. It didn't sell. I don't know. We didn't really talk about that. Or they said they're going to do some more open houses or whatever the case may be. But it starts to get them thinking like, well, yeah, what are they going to do? And so I would dive into, that's exactly why we need to get together. And if they object on that and they say, well, yeah, no, I think we're just going to, totally get it. And what I'm hearing you say is that you feel obligated to your last agent because they invested time and money in your home, right? And when they originally listed your house, they most likely intended to sell it. Wouldn't you agree? And they probably did everything they could to get it sold. Wouldn't you agree? Or right? Either one, tie down, throw it in there. Exactly. And they're going to say something like, well, yeah, I'm sure they did everything they could. Exactly. And yet the house didn't sell. You see, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, I'm convinced that it's not for a lack of effort, but it's most likely in the approach. Your house just needs a new approach. Now, you don't owe me anything, and you really don't owe them anything either, but you do owe yourself the very best, and it certainly wouldn't hurt to hear what I have to do to get houses sold, would it? That's exactly why we need to get together today. All right, so here's the thing. It certainly wouldn't hurt to hear what I have to do to get home sold. It wouldn't hurt to get a second opinion, would it? All right, before you lock in to another lengthy agreement with an agent that didn't get your house sold the first time, wouldn't hurt to get a second opinion or at least hear a different marketing strategy, would it? Now, this is no cost, no obligation whatsoever. It'd only take about 10 or 15 minutes. Would you have some availability maybe later today that I could come out around 4? Would 6 o'clock be better? All right, so that again, it's starting to plant the doubt because you will get this objection that I'm going to stick with my same agent, and you have to be able to overcome it. Now, here's one that might come up. What do you do differently from other realtors? You're just the same as other realtors in Real Estate Group. So what do you do differently? It's a great question. Some realtors put the sign in the yard, they place it in the MLS, and they pray that somebody else sells the property for them. See, we're going to go an extra step, or actually quite a few extra steps. But what we do is we prospect on behalf of our sellers, and we aggressively market the home to get that property sold for top dollar in no time. It's definitely a different experience with us than any other realtor. So what are we doing differently than just putting the sign in the yard, putting it in the MLS, letting it feed out to the hundreds of real estate websites out there? And then what are we doing differently? One thing I recommend is if your MLS offers reverse prospecting, I would reverse prospect every single listing every single week until it's sold. What is reverse prospecting? I answer the phone. So Lise just says, I answer the phone. Answering the phone got me a 674. Yeah, exactly. Answer your phones. Yeah, it's a big one. Yeah, when you answer your phone, you'd be amazed what happens. So many agents don't answer their phone and they miss out on potential business. So pick up the phone. Maybe it's a client calling you back or a potential client calling you back. So maybe it's agents calling that want to show your listing or have questions about it. Answer your phone. Very important. So what are we doing differently though as well? As far as reverse prospecting is a tool within your MLS or most MLSs, I would imagine that you're able to see a list of every agent that potentially has a buyer for your listing. This is agent. That means that agent has set their buyer up with a home search in the MLS that matches, and now their home search matches the same criteria as your listing. So what I do, what I would tell clients is that every single week, I'd show them an example in my listing presentation. This is an example of reverse prospecting. Are you familiar with this? No, I'm not. Well, what this is let's hypothetically say this image here or this list of agents was for your property. This means that every one of these agents has a home buyer and their search criteria matches your home. So what I'm going to do, as soon as we list your property and I have this list, I'm going to begin emailing all of them, letting them know about your property. And then I'm going to pick up the phone and start calling them. I'm going to call them and I'm going to say, hey, I just sent you an email and I see you have a client that might be a good fit for my new listing at 123 Main Street. Do you anticipate setting up a showing to come see it? Furthermore, when a client favorites the house, I'm going to see that as well. I'm going to call their agent immediately and let them know that their client just saved our listing as a favorite. And when do they anticipate coming to see it and to schedule a showing to come see it? Now, I'm going to do this every single week until I get your home sold. And I'm going to make sure I get your property in front of every single realtor that has a potential buyer for your home. And I'm going to pick up the phone and call them and make sure that I'm staying in front of them to get as many potential buyers through your home as possible to net you top dollar. Does that make sense? So again, I'm going beyond just putting the sign in the yard. I'm going to pick up the phone and start calling. Another thing I do, I run ads. So we offer the Bold Trail CRM. You can boost properties, you can boost your listing and start generating Facebook leads. One of the percentage points when a seller was asked a survey and they said, what do you expect from your realtor? A high percentage was we expect them to find a buyer for our home. So I need to overcome that objection that might come up, or at least address it in my presentation. And in our Network Global Listing presentation that we offer, it does it covers this. But what am I doing to proactively look for buyers for their home? Am I boosting the property through our CRM and generating buyer leads? Am I running Google pay-per-click ads and generating buyer leads through Google, right? Through search engines. What am I doing to look for buyers? If I'm doing open houses, what am I doing to make sure it's the best open house possible to drive as much traffic through it, the property? Am I just putting a sign in the yard and putting it in the MLS and hoping that people come? Or am I taking it a step further and doing a lot more than that to really, am I door knocking? Am I calling around neighborhoods? Am I sending out flyers? What am I doing to get as much traffic? So just be thinking about that. How do you differentiate yourself in what you currently do to sell homes that other realtors don't? And if you're not doing anything other than putting it in the MLS and putting a sign in the yard, we need to start adding some things in. So be thinking about what could you do differently and what will you do differently to set yourself apart from any other agent. And what I just gave you the reverse prospecting, in my opinion, wins a lot of listings because it shows we're being proactive. It shows that we have access to realtors that have buyers. And it shows we're going to go above and beyond to make sure we're doing whatever we can to get their home sold. What I would also do too is every time I would reverse prospect, I'd call my client and update them. Hey, I want to let you know I just sent out 42 emails. I made 27 phone calls. I connected with 8 of them. Of the 8, 2 of them said they have a strong interest in probably wanting to come see the house this week. Actually, another favorite just popped up. I left a voicemail and sent a text to that agent. And I'm anticipating a phone call back here real soon. I'll stay on that and make sure I connect with them to see if we can get them in to get your home sold. I would be doing that stuff constantly, updating my clients. Hey, this is a guy that's proactive. This is a much different experience than my last realtor that I had a call. They never called me. What I always say too, when it comes to customer service, when it comes to client servicing, whether you're under contract or whether you have a listing that's active or you have a buyer, if they never have to call you, you're doing a fantastic job. So if I'm always the one calling to update them with next steps, here's what's next, here's what I'm doing, here's what I'm doing to promote your home, here's the feedback, I've got the feedback already, this or that. I don't have feedback yet from that showing, but I've called them 6 times. I've sent them 4 emails. I've sent 5 texts. They haven't responded. I'm going to keep calling to let them until I get feedback for you. All right. The more proactive you can be, and if your client never has to call you, you're doing an excellent job with client servicing. Now, if your client calls you all the time with questions, you're not doing a very good job because you're not setting the expectations. You're not letting them know what's next. Here's what I'm doing. Here's how I'm being proactive. Here's the next steps in the process. We just went under contract. Next step, we're going to get inspections done, whatever the case may be. But just think about your last couple of transactions. If they've had to call you, the client's always calling you, you're not doing a good job of future pacing what's happening next in the transaction, or doing a good job of keeping them up to date with what you're doing to help get their home sold. So just keep that in mind. Off topic, but I think that's really important. All right, I already found another agent. So this is another one that comes up. I already found another agent. So some of these scripts are a little cheesy. They can work. I'd throw them out there. I don't use all of these, but have you signed paperwork with that agent? No, we haven't. If you had to go to a doctor because you had an illness and you found out it involved surgery, you would want another opinion, wouldn't you? Well, I know this isn't surgery, yet it is financial surgery on your house. Let's meet for about 20 minutes and you'll see why so many people have decided to hire me over other agents. So that's one you could use. I didn't use that one a lot. I would go the second opinion route though. Look, it wouldn't hurt, right? If you knew I can net you more money and a quicker sale, you would want to at least meet with me, right? Wouldn't hurt to get a second opinion. That's fantastic. You found another agent. Have you interviewed multiple agents? Are you still looking to interview agents? It wouldn't hurt to get another opinion, wouldn't it? I'd love to come out for 10 or 15 minutes and share with you exactly what I do to help homeowners just like yourself sell. You see, some of the best properties don't sell the first time around, and I'm confident with my marketing plan, I can help you get your home sold and get you moved to Florida to be closer to the grandkids. All right, so you will get this objection, be able to overcome it. I've already found another agent. It wouldn't hurt to hear what I have to say, would it? It wouldn't hurt to hear my marketing plan, would it? I've helped hundreds of sellers. If you haven't helped hundreds of sellers, I work with a company that's helped hundreds of sellers just like yourself sell their home, even though it didn't sell the first time around. Use the company statistics to your advantage if you're a new agent. My company has helped, right? I have a plan, a marketing plan that has helped X amount of sellers. All right, use some of those statistics to your advantage. You're brand new. I work with a company that has hundreds of years of experience in the real estate industry, right? Combined real estate years. Right? Use those statistics to your advantage. If I could help you net more money and get you a quicker sale, would you be interested? They're probably not going to say no. They're going to be like, well, yeah, but I already hired, I got this guy coming out. Totally understand. And here's the thing. It'll only take about 10 or 15 minutes. It wouldn't hurt just to hear a different marketing perspective, would it? No, I guess not. Fantastic. I can come out there today. You have some availability later today at 2, or would later in the day at 6 be better? All right. So I'm going to talk about why I set appointments for today as well. So I'm going to sell it myself. FSBO, this one will pop up. You know what? No, we're just going to take it off. We're going to sell it ourselves. So, that's fantastic. And tell me, what specifically is the benefit for you to do that? Well, we're going to save on commission. We're just burned out working with agents. We're tired. You know what? After what you've been through, I certainly understand. And in fact, you're generally better off being a for sale by owner than to work with an agent who doesn't understand the market and what it takes to sell homes. Most agents do what I call the 3 Ps. Here's where I mentioned this before. They put the sign in the yard, they place your home in the multiple listing service, and pray that some other agent will come along and sell it for them. So I actually go a lot further than that. I study the market every day, and I stay in constant communication with my sellers about their specific market every week. Also, I proactively and aggressively prospect for buyers for my listings every day. In fact, every 70 new prospects I spoke with last year, something of mine sold. Isn't that the kind of assurance you would want if you were to hire another agent? So what else are you looking for in an agent, right? So again, this is something where they're going to say, I'm selling it myself. They don't want to sell it themselves. They're just tired of the process. They're tired of the process. They got a little burned maybe by their last agent. They've been on the market. They're tired of keeping their house clean, beds made every day, floors swept, all of that, ready for showings, then nobody comes to see it. Right? They're tired of finally getting that one showing, and they rush home, from work real quick to organize the house and get it ready, and then the person doesn't show up. They don't want to sell it themselves. They hired an agent for a reason. They're just tired of the process. They're tired of the process. They're tired of being let down. You need to be that person that can show them that you can step in, proactively and aggressively market this property, price it correctly, and get it sold. So to Elise's point earlier, about the getting the house set up to sell, I absolutely agree with that. I was just talking with an agent this morning. He said that he's got an expired he's going on, and the photos were terrible. So keep in mind the statistic, 97% of home buyers start their search online. If the photos are terrible, that is our first showing. So remember in the days of curb appeal, like before the internet, it was curb appeal. Person drives by the house, right? There was no photos online. So they're like, they saw in the newspaper, this house was for sale. They would drive by, they see the sign, they're like, oh, this house looks really cute on the outside. It's really well maintained. Curb appeal. Now it's web appeal. Right? 97%. They're not driving by as much anymore. They're looking online, they're looking at the photos and making a determination of whether or not they want to go see that property in person or not. So I'm looking at that from a standpoint of I need to make sure these listings show the best they can online. That means I need to hire a professional photographer. I may need my staging consultant to go out, walk through the property through the eyes of the buyer, and make sure it's set up or it shows as best can for my photographer to go out and photograph it. One thing I always say too in my presentation, I offer, for me personally, I offer a listing or staging consultation. It's about $100. Staging consultant comes out for about 20 or 30 minutes, walks through and gives them tips on what to do to get their house ready to sell. What I always tell people is that we live in our homes for comfort. And when it comes time to sell our homes, we have to set it up for functionality. So what does that mean? It means that if they have a lazy boy or recliners here and it's not situated well, but it's comfortable for them because they like to watch TV on this wall or whatever the case may be, we may need to adjust that furniture to make that room look more functional, to show the room that it looks as much space as possible. So we may need to depersonalize, take down, if there's hundreds of photos on the walls going up the staircase of their family and all that, maybe some of that needs to come down or all of it. So we need to set the home up from a functionality perspective so that a home buyer can walk into it and see themselves living there, not walk into it and just see 40 years of our personal memories all over the home. So keep that in mind. Very important. We're taking it off the market. We've decided to stay. This will come a lot too. Again, this is not something that's true most of the time. Most of the time, they're not going to stay. They're just burned out on the process. They're tired of realtors calling them. They're wondering where all you realtors were at when my home is on the market. Now you all want to sell my house, but none of you brought a buyer, things like that. So what specifically is the benefit for you to take it off the market and stay? Well, we're just tired, didn't sell. We were just testing the market, whatever the case may be. I completely understand. I'm going to repeat and affirm that you were just testing the market. And if you knew I could sell it for you in this market and net you what you need, would you at least consider it? That's a big script I use a lot that works really well. If you knew I could sell it for you in this market and net you what you need, would you still consider it? Most of the time, they're going to say maybe or yes. It's rare they're going to say no. Just out of curiosity, where were you moving to if your home sold? Florida. That's great. That's great. You're wanting to move to Florida. What was important about getting to Florida? Be closer to the grandkids. Well, if we can make this happen, and what I mean is if a contract were presented to you today, would you still sell? Yeah, if a contract was presented today, great. So there's still that desire to move as long as you don't have to go through what you went through the last time. Is that correct? Well, that's exactly why we need to get together so I can share with you exactly what I do to get home sold and how this experience will be different from your last. So I like that one too. If a contract were presented to you today, would you still sell? Yes, we would. Okay, then they don't want to stay. They just don't want to deal with realtors or the process right now. Right? So ask that. Well, if we could make this happen, I mean, if I could get a contract on your home today and present it to you, would you still want to sell? Yes, we would. Fantastic. So there's still a desire to want to sell as long as you don't have to go through what you previously went through. Is that correct? Yes, it is. Well, great. Why don't I do this? Why don't I come out for 15 minutes and share with you exactly what I do to get home sold? I'll show you how this experience will be different, how I'm going to position your property to get as many potential buyers through as possible and get your home sold for the most amount of money in the least amount of time. Does that sound good? Sure. Great. I can come out tonight. Would 4 o'clock work? Would later in the night, 7 o'clock be better? All right. So keep that in mind. That is something that if they're saying we've decided to stay, most of the time they have not. They don't want to stay. Now, those are probably the only handful of objections you're going to get. You might get a couple more, but there's not many. But go through our script books. They're all in there. But you're only going to get like 4 or 5, 6 objections tops before you set the appointment. So you have to know how to overcome all of them, though. Now, this is my rule of thumb. Always set the expired or canceled appointment as soon as possible. So the goal for any expired appointment is to get in front of the seller as soon as possible. The further out you set the appointment, the higher the chance of the seller canceling. So what does that mean? For one, I was always ready. When I called expires, I used to, for about, 15 years, I suit and tie every day. I was ready. I'd wear a suit and tie every single day. I'm a little more casual now in my older age, but when I was a new agent at this, I was in a suit and tie every single day, ready to go. I anticipated every single day that my goal was I was going to set an appointment. I had 3 things I focused on every day when I started my career. It was, I'm going to sell a house today. That was what I focused on. I'm going to sell a house today. I'm going to sell a house. I'm going to sell a house. I'm going to sell a house. Now, as a solo agent, I got to selling a house every 3 days. With a team, it was like every 2 days. So when I had a team, but that was my focus every single day. I was going to sell a house, even when I was brand new. Here's what I think. I think most agents make sense of not selling homes. Well, if I sell one a month, it's cool. Well, it's been 3 months. I haven't sold anything. It's not okay. This is our full-time professional career. Let's go sell some stuff. Let's go help people accomplish their goal of wanting to buy and sell. So every single day I focused on, I'm going to sell a house today. Now, if I didn't sell a house today, or maybe I didn't have any listings or have any buyers, I had no opportunity to sell a house today, the next best thing for me was I'm going to set an appointment today. I'm going to set an appointment and go get in front of somebody to help them buy or sell a home. And if that didn't happen, the third best thing was I'm going to add people to my database by having conversations today that want to do something in the future, meaning they want to buy or sell a home in the future. That was the 3 things I focused on every day. When I started putting intention and focus around that, I started selling more houses. So every day when I left for the day, and I set office hours back then too. I was in the office before 8. I would stay till 5 o'clock every single day, even if I had nothing to do. It would force me to go figure out more things to do. It would force me to call more people, figure out different ways to lead generate, figure out different strategies, connect with other agents in the office and figure out what they were doing and what works. Add people in my database, clean up my database, right? Office hours. I treated it like a full-time job, and over time I made full-time money. And so what I would say though is I was prepared to go on appointments every single day. So I wasn't like in my pajamas making expire calls, and then they're like, well, yeah, because this will happen too. They say, well, yeah, if you can come out in the next hour, I'll be here. You know, I'm not living here, but I'm going to be at the house today. I'll be there for the next hour if you can come out. I was ready to go. I wasn't like, oh, well, yeah, no, I'm in my pajamas. I still got to take a shower and get ready, right? Be ready to go. Be prepared. Treat this like a real job. You're going to make real money when you do that. So my goal was to get in front of the seller as quickly as possible. If I could set the appointment for today, that's what I wanted. Because what happens is if I set an appointment today for next week, there is a 99% chance that appointment will cancel. Right? If I set it for today, there's a 99% chance that appointment is going to stick. If I set it for tomorrow, it goes to like 80%. If I set it for the next day, it's like 70%. If I set it to the next day, it's like 50%. Every day that goes by, the probability of that appointment canceling gets higher. Or they're going to call and say, oh, hey, I know we talked the other day and you were coming out on Friday, but we ended up listing with somebody else. They came out, we liked what they had to say, and we ended up signing with them. So I was also taught early on in my career to be the last person in the appointment. I tell you to be the first. So even if they're like, well, I'm interviewing 8 agents, and I promise we're not signing anything with you yet. We're going to interview all 8. Hey, that's fantastic. Why don't I do this? I've got some availability later today. Could I come out today around 2 or later in the evening around 6 be better for you? I want to be the first, because when I go out there, if they like everything I have to say, chances are I can get them to sign with me. Even though they told me they wouldn't. There are a lot of times that has happened. They're like, well, we're not signing anything. Totally understand. I'm zero pressure. This is no cost, no pressure, no obligation whatsoever. It's just going to allow you to get some more information on what I do to get home sold. And so I wanted to be the first in. I want to be the first in because when I was the first in, I had a high probability of them saying, yeah, you know what? This sounds really good. I don't want to spend the next 4 days interviewing agents. I like what you have to say. Everything looks good. Your track record looks good, so on and so forth. Let's go ahead and sign the paperwork. So that is something that keep in mind. Try to be the first in, but be ready to go on the appointment. Get on it as quickly as possible. Don't schedule it for Friday or next week. Schedule it for today. Schedule it for tomorrow. But I found that anything beyond 2 days out is probably going to cancel. So just keep that in mind. That's my 2 cents on that from my experience. Now, after I have a phone call, what am I doing? So after I have a phone call, what am I doing? One, I'm sending them a text with my contact info. And if you have a link for your reviews, send it. What I would recommend is if you don't have any reviews, set up a Google business page or Facebook page, or use your website through our Bold Trail CRM and put reviews, start getting reviews on that website. You can set up a quick landing page. Maybe Leo, we can do a training on how to do that. But Google business page works really well. It's pretty easy to set up. I think we might have a video on how to set that up. If not, we'll get one. But you have to start getting reviews somewhere. Now, if you're a brand new agent, you might not have reviews, but maybe you can get reviews from people you know just based on your character. right? So I wouldn't have people lie about reviews by any means, but maybe they can just say so and so is an excellent person, known them a long time, really excited they're in real estate, something like that, right? But over time, you can start getting, when you have past clients, ask for a review. Can I get a review? I had an agent that I worked with years ago, probably 11 years ago, and she had handwritten reviews from sellers, because this was pre well, I think Google Business was around then, but she'd been in the business like 30 years. She was old school, which was fantastic. She did a great job. She had handwritten reviews, and she would bring copies of her handwritten reviews and leave them with the seller at the presentation. So it works. It all works. People were impressed by that. She had like 40 or 50 handwritten reviews, and people were like, yeah, she sold a lot of houses. It looks like she's got really good reviews. So don't overcomplicate it. But if you can, set up a Google page and make that happen. We got a comment here. Let's see. I have reviews from my referral partners and agents that I've worked with in the past. There you go. Yeah, that works too. Exactly. Just start getting some reviews. If you don't have any past clients, just go that route. Right now, if you do have past clients, set up a Google business page or a Facebook page or your website, send it to them and ask them to give you a review. Hey, it would really help me out a lot if I could get a 5-star review from you. Would you be offended if I sent over a link for you to fill that out? Go start getting reviews, because people will Google you. They're going to Google you, and you want to have some information about yourself. Make sure your profiles are filled out on different websites, things like that. So I'm going to send my reviews in a text. So I'm going to send my contact information. Hey, thanks so much for taking my time. Look forward to meeting with you tonight at 4 o'clock. Here is my contact information and a link for what some of my past clients have said about me that have used me. Now, send an email. I'm also going to send an email. So I'm going to text and email with all of my contact info and an overview of what I do to get homes sold, as well as my reviews. So what is that? My overview. What I did with my overview is I took my listing presentation and I summarized every slide that I do on my listing presentation. I put it into a summary format in an email, and I sent that to them in addition to the links for my reviews. It's sharing with them everything I'm going to do to get the house sold. And again, it's right now when I call and expire, they don't know me at all. So now they get a text from me with my contact info. And on my contact info, in my contact card on my cell phone, make sure you're setting it up with your name, phone number, email, your company name. Maybe tie in your website, in your contact card, your social media handles, things like that. So make sure it's complete contact info. Send that to them. Allow them to start learning about who you are, via text and email. And then I'm going to summarize my listing presentation, and that's what I would do. I'd send out a summary of what I do to get homes sold, so they can review that and see that I do quite a bit more than just put a sign in the yard and pray the house sells. So I'm sending an email, and then the other thing I would do is send a Google Calendar invite. So I get their contact information. Here's what I'd like to do. It's next steps. Great. I look forward to seeing you tonight at 4 o'clock. Here's what I'd like to do. I'd like to text you my contact information with some reviews about myself and my team, if you have one. Is this the best number to text that information to? Yes, it is. Fantastic. What I'd also like to do is send you an email with an overview of my marketing strategy, as well as a calendar invite. What's the best email to send that to? Whatever it is, at gmail.com. Fantastic. So now I've got their name, phone number, home address. I've got their email as well. I'm going to send them a calendar invite. Now, here's the thing. If they accept your calendar invite, chances are pretty high they're going to stick to that appointment. So, but even if they don't accept your calendar appointment, if I set the appointment for today, I'm not calling at like 3 o'clock. Hey, just want to confirm you're still going to be there. I'm just going on that appointment. I'm not calling to confirm. I just talked to them at 10:43. I set the appointment for 3 o'clock. I'm still going to send them a calendar invite, text them and email them, but I'm not calling to confirm that appointment. I'm just going. Right now, if I set the appointment for tomorrow, I want to do all of that, and then I want to call tomorrow and confirm the appointment. Now, I'm not going to call when I confirm the appointment and say, hey, I was just checking to see if today at 3 o'clock, this is tomorrow, right? I set the appointment for tomorrow at 3. I'm going to call them in the morning tomorrow, and I'm not going to say, I just wanted to see if 3 o'clock still works for you. I'm not going to do that, because that gives them a way out. No, it doesn't work. What I'm going to do is call and say, hey, John, Jim, Sally, whatever their name is, I'm looking forward to seeing you at 3 p.m. today. If you have any questions, feel free to give me a call. Or I'm looking for, if they don't answer, that's my voicemail. Hey, I'm looking forward to seeing you today at 3. If you have any questions, give me a call. Or if they do answer, hey, I'm looking forward to seeing you at 3 p.m. Do you have any questions before I come out? No, we'll be here. Okay, fantastic. So don't ask, does it still work for you? Just assume the appointment because you've already set it, and make sure you follow. Now, one thing in the past, when I would set appointments out a little bit, like 2 or 3 days out, and then I would not call to confirm, I would go on that appointment and they wouldn't be there. So, in my opinion, if you set it for today, don't worry about confirming. If anything beyond today, though, call and confirm. Because the last thing you want, I would be like, well, if I don't call and confirm, then they can't cancel, right? So I'm just going to show up. But then I would show up and nobody would be home. So now I prepped for this appointment. I did all my comps, all my comparables, got all my marketing together. I drove to the house. They weren't there. I waited around, tried calling them a bunch of times. They don't answer. And then I had to leave. So I just burned hours of my day. It's a waste of time. So call and confirm. That would be my 2 cents there. Don't just go on the appointment without confirming unless you set it today for today. That's it. So that's all I've got there. Any questions? Does anybody have questions about this process? I find that it's pretty straightforward. The hardest part, in my opinion, is getting good at the scripting to overcome. I had a question. Have you ever scheduled an appointment several weeks in advance? Yeah, and they tend to cancel. So if somebody says, yeah, it's, I'm going out of town, right? I'm going out of town. We can do something on February 20th, right? Then schedule it, of course, but then you're certainly going to want to follow up. And so you can, but what I would also say, as I mentioned earlier, is the probability of them canceling is pretty high. So what I want on these appointments is to go on the appointment today as much as possible. I want to go on it as quickly as I can because every day that goes by, the probability is getting higher of canceling. So to wrap it up here and summarize, expireds can be a fantastic pillar when done correctly. They're motivated. They want to sell. Oftentimes they didn't have the best experience. And so you want to make sure that you're getting good at overcoming the objections. You want to make sure your listing presentation is really good. And what I would also say too is practice your listing presentation. Don't just do something where it's like, well, I just practice when I go on it. Practice it. The more you practice, get a script practice partner. Early on, I had script practice partners. I had a guy out of Colorado actually, and we would call each other at, it was like 7:30 my time, I think 6:30 his time, I think. We would call each other before we make calls. So he different time zone or whatever. So, but we would script practice for about 30 minutes, and then I would jump on the phones, write a date, and start making calls. My script practice, it was not, hey, how's it going? What's up? How are things? How is this or that? It was not a friendly phone conversation. It was literally, we'd get on the phone. We wouldn't even say hi. We would just jump in with the script. I'd call him and say, hey, this is Michael. I'm a local realtor in the area, and I saw your home at 123 Main Street came off the market. Out of curiosity, did that home sell? Or if not, is it still available? We would go right into it. There was no pleasantries. Like, we wouldn't waste time. We script practiced and we got on the phones and start making calls. So just keep that in mind, that get a script practice partner. Call, this is a thing too, get your presentation put together, your listing presentation, and call people in your SOI. Hey, you know what? I'm not sure if you're aware, but I just got my real estate license recently, and I'm looking to really get good at my craft. I was wondering if you would do me a favor. Would it be all right if I stopped by for 10 or 15 minutes and just ran some comparables on your home to see what it would sell for on the market today, and then just share with you my marketing strategy? I totally understand you're not looking to sell, but it would help me out to get some practice. Would you be okay if I came over the weekend, or would you have some time? Now, you don't want to call somebody like a stranger, but if you have really close friends, family members, aunts, uncles, show them that you're taking this serious and you're looking to get better. That's a great way to practice. And if you mess up, who cares? They're people that know you, love you, trust you, right? And it's okay to mess up in front of them. But again, it's a good way to do that. So I've seen some listings in withdrawn followed up by expired. Yes, as long as it goes into expired, then that is okay, Tara. So it's agents will do that. Yeah, they'll withdraw it, and then their contract term will expire over the course of, I don't know, weeks, a month, whatever the case may be. So once it's expired, that is totally fine. But do not call, as I mentioned earlier, don't call withdrawals, but call canceled and expireds. That's okay. So good question. That's it. That's all I got for today. I highly recommend jump on that link that Leo posted. Either watch that video or jump on the NAR lawsuit, or not lawsuit, the NAR training around that, because I think that it's, yeah, Leo posted it there. I think that might be a good one just to get some clarity around this TCPA ruling and what that means. because a lot of agents think, oh, I can never cold call anybody again. That's not necessarily what they're saying. It has a lot to do with the auto dialer and blasting voicemails out and things like that, and using AI, stuff like that. So take a look at that. And if you have questions, call me as always. Appreciate everybody being on. Hopefully this was helpful, and we'll go from there. Talk to y'all soon. Thanks so much.